Hi, this is Chuck Kent at Creative On Call for Branding Magazine. Here at Edelman Digital in Chicago this morning, speaking with the managing director, correct?
Yeah, for digital.
For digital, David Armano. David is somebody that I have been following online, and as we look at what the agency of tomorrow might look like, I've asked David to speak to it from the perspective of a digital agency. So first of all, what is your definition of a digital agency even at this point?
That's a great question. I don't think that there is really a definition for a digital agency anymore, with the exception of, I think that the reality is that one of the things that a digital agency does that's different maybe from another type of agency is that the services at its core are digital in nature versus being additive. So I think that's really, that's a very pragmatic way of looking at it, but I think it's true. When you look at other agencies, they may have started in broadcast or may have started other media and then they added on and expanded. And for a digital agency, or even just, in our case, we operate as a digital agency within the larger construct of Edelman. Mm-hmm. Our core offerings are digital in nature. So that's probably the fundamental difference.
Well, that brings up an interesting conundrum out there right now, which is, exactly how does one define or even in a way constructively limit your services? So, for instance, there's a new e-marketer report out, and it basically talks about the blurring offline and online marketing. And so I'm curious, operating within the larger Edelman structure, et cetera, how much do you discreetly blur those lines in-house?
Yeah,
do you
massively they're blurred. We have all kinds of practices, digital being one. We have a consumer practice, we have a corporate practice. Oftentimes we're working with those other practices. We just happen to go deep in the digital expertise, and I think that all the chatter out there is that all these lines blur. That's all true. It's just that when you saddle up with partners, if the depth isn't there, you can't execute. That's the difference.
Will the agency of the future continue to be siloed, or will it become more of a centralized agency with closer operating practices with it?
I think that there's going to be more forced working together, whether it's a lot of these generalizations, right? And every business has some type of agency ecosystem in place. Some have very small ones, where they really try to do a lot themselves. They rely on just a few. Some have really big ones with a lot of specialty agencies. Some have big ones with sort of like an established lead. I think in all those scenarios, I'm in the middle of one right now where we have a client that's going to put out a major campaign during the Emmys, and there's going to be social components while the campaign goes out, and we're going to be monitoring and listening, producing content, and we are going to, a quote-unquote competitor agency's place to actually set up shop and do all these things, and we are forcing each other to work together because that's the world we now live in. So that's convergence, right? That's something that didn't really exist as much in the past. And that's where I think the silos start coming down. We're going to have client stakeholders in the same room with multiple agencies in a physical space with other partners and remote spaces all working together awkwardly.
So,
because this is not something that has been. This is a newer model.
Well, if you want to get paid, you still have to play well together. Now, do you see the opportunity, the need for you to be able to, as any part of Edelman, to be able to initiate a core idea, or is it still something clients are more comfortable with? Okay, we know that comes, the big idea, the campaign comes from our lead agency.
I think that's what's in play. Maybe not this one example I gave you, but in another example, we are putting, and my team working with some other partners internally are working on specific assignments where we're doing just that role. Right. And I will say that we have a few stakeholders on the client side that believe in it. They believe in the sort of look, ideas now come from, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
We work in a model that I call it a more responsive model. We're not doing sort of the linear broadcast, where we're kind of working in these sort of content cycles. You might have a campaign that takes from inception to, kind of spreading out 6 months. We'll work sometimes in a 1 month or a 2 month cycle. And I think that what I'm seeing, and I'm giving you a specific example, I'm not putting the names in it, but what I've seen in that situation is the person who's acting as a CMO in this case believes in that model, and is empowering us to do it. But yes, that machine is, the preconceived notions are still there. So right now there are like conversations being had to say, look, there's this other model at play and nobody really owns it. So we're just going to give the business to the people who work in that way.
So, up until now.
And all that means is, just to expand on that, that doesn't mean that all that means is that I think that pie gets dispersed a little bit more. Really, but at the end of the day, it's got to be about where the client needs to be relevant.
Just to close out, if you had to describe tomorrow's agency in one sentence, what would it be?
I would say creative, media savvy, and highly collaborative.
Okay. David Armano at Edelman Digital, thank you very much.
Thank you.